was inside my home. She was agitated and ran her fingers through her unwashed hair. Oh, listen, man, you have the wrong address. It's just me, I said, then lied. And my boyfriend is here. No, please. Just listen to me, she said, placing a hand on the doorframe and leaning in towards me. I said I couldn't help her, said again she had the wrong address, then shut the door in her face. But I could still hear her. I don't know what he's gonna do. Let me in, let me find him, she said, her muffled voice sharpening while her palm drummed on the door. He stands still. I froze in the entryway and waited. Full minutes after it sounded like she had left. In case her ear was pressed to the door. I didn't give much thought to her husband at first. Not at first. There was something off about her, how she tried to talk so calmly, even though it was obvious she was coiled tight enough to snap in half. She even kept floating on her toes, looking into my apartment behind me. But she also did not seem outcast or even neglected. No, not really. You see, her cashmere sweater and tapered pants told a different story. So I searched my apartment with the crowbar I kept under the sheets in the linen closet. No one was in the front rooms, with their windows facing the street. I had been there all day, so it was impossible for anyone to have broken in that way. But then I remembered the old dumb waiter shaft. It was behind the kitchen door, shut behind a hinged metal slab to keep noise from bleeding between apartments. It was no longer an open shaft, but a dusty compartment used as a pass-through for cables. I brought along my biggest chef knife from the drawer across from the refrigerator. The steel panel was painted the same color as the wall and had no handle or latch. Instead, there was a small jagged hole punched in one side with several drill bit plunges. I dug a screwdriver out of the trunk drawer and tried to pry it open with a single jerk, so I could step back and hold out the blade in my other hand. Instead, it swung open with a painfully slow creak, and I dropped the knife, scaring myself even more when it clattered at my feet. Without thinking, I bent down to pick it up, kneeling on the floor. I imagined a pale hand reaching out into my hair and skull. But when I stood up and looked inside, there was nothing there, just the dark. time my husband was around the corner from our French doors in the hollow, where my desk meets the printer cabinet. He must have been there all morning. He was standing straight up like a sunflower. But I didn't see him until I got up from the desk and bumped my ankle. When I looked up, suddenly he was there, staring at nothing. The second time he was behind an all-glass display case in our entryway, pinched between a pane and the wall, just inside the front door. The whispering stopped and I realized I was barely breathing. I was still kneeling and my knees were beginning to get sore. "Are you still there?" the whispered voice asked. I didn't answer. "Look, he's gotten really skinny and goes through tubes of high SPF sunscreen when he is called out to a site. So now he's white as an electric socket. He can suppress his presence and take away your intuitive sense that another person is nearby. He's practicing and he's getting better. He knows where your eyes land and the places they slide over." "Go away," I screamed before retreating to the farthest corner of my apartment from the front door. That woman took Somewhere near the highway were duplex condos faded into industrial parks. She turned into a multi-acre construction site. It was all blonde-colored dirt, scraped and marked by bulldozer treads. At the center was a cinder block frame that might one day grow into a big box store. She turned off her headlights, and suddenly the feeling I had ignored in favor of her serene understanding of my situation could no longer be ignored. I was dumbstruck with fear, my sore muscles protesting at me being called back to alert. Had I met a couple working together? A couple that instead of looking at the surface of reality. Her husband had receded into the sky out of our day-to-day existence, she said. When standing still, he wasn't an object to be found in space, but had to shut down every part of himself to become permanent. She taught me to make my eyes flat and to search without an idea of what I wanted to see. To see them, you can no longer want anything from the sky, she said. You have to deaden yourself to know what surrounds you. I laughed like a child, almost giggled when I saw the first shooting star, and forgot about my terrible day. But then there was another, and another, and another. Now please don't be afraid, she said, sitting up and placing her hand on my goose-pimpled forearm. Please don't be afraid. I looked around with my meteor eyes, and my heart bounding out of my chest. There were men standing in strange shapes, pressed against the cinder blocks, standing in the mud at bent angles across the street, even holding themselves straight, standing so still you would never see them with your regular eyes. I see them everywhere now, she whispered. I see them everywhere now. There are so many of them, just standing still. I think this is the most terrifying sort of